Number 10. Giant catfish. There have been rumours of a monster catfish living in the Mississippi River for generations. The natives spoke about a catfish so large it could eat a full-grown man. Some people say the monster catfish has eyes like a giant squid and a mouth as big as a dumpster. Well, a resident of Alton really did catch a monster catfish, and it was actually the biggest ever pulled out of the Mississippi River. Could this be the aquatic beast people have been gossiping about? An expert fisherman named Red Mudger first hooked the fish in 1902. He struggled with a catfish the size of a horse, but never managed to catch it. After Red's failure with the catfish, he warned his neighbours that the creature he saw in the river was so big that it could eat anyone that went swimming, and that everyone should be extremely careful. Everyone was worried for a bit, but nobody saw the monster again and then forgot about it. It would be over 100 years later before the catfish was finally caught. It happened in 2016. Red's great-grandson was the one to finally cast his line and reel in the monster fish. It happened unexpectedly one day while out fishing in the river. He realised he had a huge fish on the end of his line, and it was probably the same monster catfish from his great-grandfather's story. He was quite determined to catch it and therefore prove his great-grandfather wasn't a delusional drunk and that the beast was real. It took about an hour with help from the Coast Guard and 14 men to get the enormous catfish out of the river. In the end, it turned out to be 736 pounds, over 330 kilos, and about 170 years old. That made it the heaviest and oldest fish ever caught. But unfortunately, this story has never been authenticated, and so far as experts are concerned, it may never have even happened. Catfish can't survive over 170 years. Most catfish only live to be about 30. Also, the official record for the biggest catfish ever came from Thailand and was 100 pounds or 45 kilos less. Number 9. Message in a bottle. Christian Santos was spearfishing when he caught something more than a little unexpected. He found a plastic bottle with something curious inside just floating in the water. Curious, Christian snatched it up and opened the bottle and discovered a note. He couldn't believe it. He had caught a real message in a bottle. The note, oddly enough, was written by a 13-year-old kid who had been visiting a relative in Rhode Island from Vermont and thought it would be fun to write down his email on a piece of paper, stuff the paper into a bottle, and see if anyone ever emailed him. It took 2.5 years for the bottle to be found. The young spearfisherman actually caught it in Portugal near the famous Azores Islands. The bottle had drifted all the way across the ocean on a journey that was no doubt perilous. Christian did email the address in the message but has yet to receive a response. Chances are the kid who sent it all those years ago already forgot about it. The email probably went straight to his spam folder. Have you ever written a message and stuffed it inside a bottle for someone else to find? If so, what did it say? Number 8. The walking river monster. In Japan, you don't have to go far to find a legitimate river monster. A group of friends were just hanging out and strolling along the Kamigawa River in Kyoto when they saw something that scared the pants off them. There was a literal monster walking along the path beside the river. They thought it was some kind of dangerous beast and figured they should probably phone the police. Only one person in the group was brave enough to take a brief video of the animal, which turned out to be a giant Japanese salamander, a nocturnal creature that once populated many of the fresh rivers throughout Japan, but has since been put on the endangered species list. You might be wondering how a group of friends could have been scared by a salamander. After all, aren't salamanders only a few inches long? In North America, they are absolutely small, but salamanders are all over the world, and in Japan and China, the giant salamander can actually grow to incredible sizes, over 5 feet or 1.5 meters long. These things are bigger than most people's dogs. No wonder the group of friends was scared. Nobody is sure what the monster was doing wandering out in the open like that, but by the time anyone showed up to investigate, the beast had slithered back into the water. Number 7. The body in Central Park Lake. There is only one thing in the world that no fisherman wants to catch: a dead human body. But that's exactly what happened at around 11 o'clock in the morning when Louis Castois cast his line in the Central Park Lake. It was his first catch of the day, and he was excited because it felt like a pretty big fish. But then, according to NBC New York, Louis' excitement turned to horror as he realised he had just reeled in a corpse. He saw the leg come up, then the remainder of the body slowly rose to the surface. Louis has been fishing in Central Park since he was just a boy, and yet in all those years he never imagined he would catch a dead person. In a statement given by Louis himself, he called the incident devastating and said he couldn't even believe it with his own eyes. The fisherman quickly called the police, who later identified the victim as a guy in his 30s from Harlem who had suffered a mysterious head wound. As of now, they haven't released any information as to the deceased's identity or what kind of crime he was the victim of. Castois is still trying to process what happened and said he is unsure if he'd ever be able to come back to the place where he'd spent many happy days relaxing. "I don't think I will be able to come back to this park. This is like my backyard. I don't think personally I could come back to this place and be able to fish here, knowing that I hooked up a body," Castois said. This was the third time a body had been found in Central Park that month. A man in his 50s was found dead on the west side of the park last week, while another man was found floating in a pond near 59th Street on September 7. What would you do if you were fishing and reeled in a body? Let us know in the comments section down below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. The Biggest Alligator Gar. A world record was recently made in Lake Chotard, Mississippi. Commercial fisherman Kenny Williams was pulling up his final net of the morning when he saw the biggest alligator gar he had ever seen in his whole life. Amazingly, he caught the gar completely by accident in his net, and he barely had enough room in his tiny 16-foot or 4.5 metre aluminium boat to store the beast. His boat was literally filled to the brim with fish. Now, Kenny is no stranger to alligator gar. After all, he catches them quite frequently. The biggest difference is that he normally catches alligator gar that are about 3 feet or 1 metre and 30 pounds or 13 kilos in size. The one we're talking about was almost 9 feet or 2.7 metres and officially weighed 327 pounds. That's 148 kilograms. This made it a world record. According to biologists, this was the biggest alligator gar seen by human eyes ever. The previous record holder was from Texas in 1951 and only weighed 279 pounds or 127 kilos. Number 5. Mysterious math cubes. A magnet fisherman in England pulled a mysterious collection of artifacts out of a shallow river, and nobody seems to know what they are. Magnet fishermen often find things like ammunition, jewellery, and even precious objects in rivers, lakes and streams. But this time, the fisherman pulled out 60 engraved metal cubes that may have been used for fortune telling. Nobody knows how they got into the river or how old they may be, though some estimates have placed the oldest of the cubes at being 6,000 years old. Each cube is divided into grids, and within each grid is a strange alchemical symbol. Apparently, each symbol holds some curious universal value. The cubes may have been used as offerings in prayer, as part of a mysterious ritual, or by an old mystic who was trying to see into the future. But considering the symbols on the cubes appear to be from Hindu astrology, and the Hindu religion only found a foothold in England about 500 years ago, it makes no sense that the cubes could have been in the river for 6,000 years, back before even Stonehenge was built. Number 4. Mutant Fish. A fisherman recently hauled a mutant out of the Connecticut River. It wasn't a green super mutant with 7 eyes and huge muscles and a bad attitude. It was actually a mutant carp. The discovery was made after a bad day of fishing, with Jimmy Ayala feeling pretty upset about a day of poor catches. But just before he packed it in, he hooked a 25-pound or 11-kilo fish, an absolute beast of an animal. But there was something not quite right about it. As things turned out, the carp had a rare combination of genetic mutations. It was a golden bronze fish with strange fins. It appeared to be the mixture between a fantail carp and a mirror carp. The fish had the fins of a fantail with the distinct scales of a mirror, something normally not seen in nature. The fish was also estimated to be 15 years old, and in fish years, that's ancient. Number 3. Witch Bottle. Bartender Shane Mears likes to find things washed up on the shore. He's an eclectic guy who uses a thin steel rod to prod the dirt as he wanders along the edges of rivers looking for treasure. He's been doing this for years. When his steel rod hits something hard or he hears a crunch, he gets on his hands and knees and starts digging. Believe it or not, Shane catches a lot of very cool stuff using this method. Just recently, while checking out the foundation of a construction site on Brooklyn Avenue just beside the river, he found animal bones, an old woman's shoe from the 1800s, and a glass bottle left behind by a witch. The site was over the remains of a house that had just been torn down. It seems the house may have belonged to a legitimate American witch. It was the bottle filled with hair and teeth and a murky liquid that really shocked Shane, as experts say it was probably a bottle made by a woman practicing magic as a means to influence fate, either to get rich, to fall in love, or even to cause horrible pain to the person in possession of the bottle and its gross contents. What kind of spell do you think the witch was trying to cast? Number 2. Accidental crocodile. A pair of fishermen accidentally hooked a saltwater crocodile. It happened in Queensland, Australia, when a pair of friends were out simply trying to catch a couple of fish. They were using ordinary 12-pound or 5.5 kilo fishing lines, standard bait, and had never expected that a crocodile over 6 feet or 1.8 metres long would latch onto the line and nearly pull one of the guys off the boat. The issue with catching a crocodile on the end of your fishing line is that you probably won't get the line back. As soon as the croc realised it was hooked, it began to freak out. It thrashed in the water, rolled frantically, and tried its hardest to break free, which of course only made the crocodile even more tangled up in the line. It also kept drawing closer and closer to the boat. Luckily, these fishermen weren't amateurs. They managed to safely get the reptile untangled and let it swim back into the water, probably confused and more than a little overwhelmed. Number 1. Kentucky Lake Monster. A woman from Tennessee reeled in a legit monster catfish on Kentucky Lake. This was a real river monster that actually existed. According to Fox News, Paula Cathy Smith managed to catch an 88-pound or 40-kilogram catfish, which was a personal best and the biggest she'd ever seen in all her years of fishing. Even more amazing is that she had been on a month-long dry streak just before. She caught the prize fish after only 30 minutes of being out on the water. It may not have been 736 pounds like the catfish from Mississippi we talked about earlier, but at least this one is certified real. Paula never took the fish home to eat it though, as after she had a photo shoot with the huge and very slippery catfish, she threw it back into the water.
10. Massive crayfish. Crayfish are kind of disturbing, no? Everyone gets a little creeped out by their strange bodies, which look like weird insects. Fortunately, they're all small, right? Right? That's what you thought. In Kentucky, a utility worker discovered a crayfish so big it could pass as a lobster. To give you an idea of just how big the crayfish was, also known as a crawdad, on average, a crayfish is about 3 inches or 7 centimeters long. There are some species that even grow to be 6 inches or 15 centimeters. This one was a whopping 10 inches or 25 centimeters from tail to claw. Even Western Kentucky University biology professor Steve Husky said he could hardly believe it when he first saw the thing. He thought someone was playing a trick on him. How did the massive crayfish get so massive? Nobody's really sure. It was pulled out of the water filtration system in the intake plant in Bowling Green by one of the workers. So far as we know, this is the biggest crayfish ever caught in Kentucky. Steve from the university even contacted the Illinois Natural History Survey, who happened to have a collection of over 90,000 different crustaceans. The crayfish proved to be bigger than anything in the collection. 9. Supergiant crustacean. 4 miles or 6 kilometers beneath the surface of the ocean off the coast of New Zealand, a giant crustacean unlike anything you've ever seen before was just discovered. It's being called a supergiant, and for good reason. The creature is a type of amphipod. In the wild, these things are normally just over half an inch or 1 centimeter long. The ones 4 miles or 6 kilometers deep were found to be over a foot long or 30 centimeters. That's over 10 times normal length. According to Alan Jameson from the University of Aberdeen, it was like finding a cockroach bigger than your foot. Obviously, if these creatures roamed around above ground, they would be some of the most disgusting things you could ever imagine encountering. And millions of years ago, they may very well have lived above the surface. But now, they sit at the bottom of the sea, waiting to feast on whatever floats their way. How did they find such amazing crustaceans? Scientists used special metal traps mounted with cameras to see what was on the bottom of the ocean floor. What they found was a whole army of these monsters. They apparently live at the bottom of ocean trenches and in the deepest parts of the world's oceans. They thrive in places where the pressure is 1,000 times greater than at sea level. What's really amazing is that nobody found these huge animals until just now. 8. Giant lobster claw. Off the coast of Wales, a marine biologist stumbled upon a monstrous lobster claw that could be proof of a literal giant lobster skulking around somewhere along the Welsh coastline. Of course, it probably died after losing its claw, but there could be others like it. The claw measured 8 inches or 20 centimeters. This is outstanding because when placed next to an ordinary lobster, the claw is bigger than the animal. The owner of the claw is probably around 3 feet, which is 3 times bigger than your average lobster. That's right, it would have been a fierce match for any human, especially if that human were diving into its territory. The discovery is made by Sean Kraken, who runs his own oyster farm in a small Welsh village. He accidentally pulled the lobster claw onto his vessel while fishing for oysters. In an email to Newsweek, Sean claimed he had never seen anything even remotely as large as the claw. Even though he didn't find the actual beast that it belonged to, there's no doubt that it was huge. He estimated the lobster to be at least 50 years old, though it could be significantly older. As you may already know, lobsters molt to grow older, and they never stop growing their entire lives. That means that ancient, vicious giant lobsters could very well live deep under the sea, where humans never see. 7. Tasmanian king crab. Back in 2012, there was a Tasmanian king crab named Claude who was saved from certain death after being caught by a fisherman who was shocked by his outrageous size. Instead of just cooking the crab in the world's largest pot, the fisherman sold Claude to a British aquarium for $3,000. The crab had to make a 29-hour plane journey from Australia to England, where he was to be put on display. Claude weighs 15 pounds or 7 kilos and measures over a foot. Even more shocking is that he hasn't even fully grown yet. Once he finally stops growing, he'll probably be at least 30 pounds, which would make him a feast for a family-sized gathering, at least if that family likes to eat crabs. Put it this way, he's bigger than most people's dogs. As of right now, Claude is the biggest crab anywhere on display in the United Kingdom. He's so big that you could make 160 crab cakes out of him, although he'd probably prefer if you didn't. He's also 100 times larger than the shore crab normally found in the United Kingdom. He's on display at the Sea Life Centre in Dorset, housed inside of a specialised tank 10 feet or 3 meters tall and 6 feet or 2 meters wide. 6. The Giant Sea Bucc. There is a giant and pretty terrifying monster living in the waters of Indonesia. It's a type of crustacean known as an isopod, and a big one was recently pulled out of the water. These insect-like marine animals live at the bottom of the sea and grow to be as large as puppies. There are about 10,000 species of isopod living both on land and in the ocean. You're probably familiar with the ones in your garden, the little pill bugs that aren't even as big as your pinky fingernail. Well, the isopod pulled out of the waters of Indonesia is the newest and biggest species ever seen, and it measures 13 inches or 30 centimeters in length. That's way bigger than your hand, and probably about half the length of your forearm. Isopods are strange crustaceans. They have 2 pairs of antennae, a segmented body broken into 7 sections, way too many legs, and eyes buried in their face, making them look like monsters. This one was pulled up from a depth of 4,000 feet or 1,200 meters during the South Java Deep Sea Biodiversity Expedition. They're mostly bottom feeders, eating whatever they can find at the bottom of the ocean and scavenging carcasses whenever possible. Have you ever seen a disturbing-looking crustacean in your life? Where was it? What was it? What did you think of it? Were you scared? Tell me about it in the comments below. Then remember to subscribe to Epic Wildlife if you haven't already for more insane videos just like this one. 5. One-claw crayfish. Crayfish are violent fighters down below the surface of the ocean, and this one showed that he was a survivor against all odds. Yet another massive crayfish was recently discovered, this one from a rainforest in Tasmania. The giant crayfish was found with only one claw, located during a scientific mission. To date, it's the second biggest Tasmanian giant freshwater crayfish ever captured in the area. It may have been the biggest, but it only had one claw. Do you think it lost its other one in a fight with a rival? Hey, it's entirely possible. This type of crayfish has been a priority species for the last 20 years as its numbers have been dwindling. Activists are trying to protect a small area of 30,000 hectares where crayfish and other animals can live in peace without logging, but nothing has really been done by the government to make this happen. We all know something should be done, but bureaucracy moves slowly. The crayfish here are huge, though nobody could say why they continue to grow so big. Regardless, this one is absolutely fascinating, if only it could talk. 4. Crabzilla. In the English Channel, a very large crustacean has been captured. It's a crab, and it weighs nearly 9 pounds, or 4 kilos, and has claws so massive they could literally crush a person's wrist. It's a type of large edible brown crab, and it was captured by a local fisherman off the coast of Portsmouth. The crab has a crushing strength of around 90 pounds per square inch, or 540 kilopascals. In comparison, that's about 4 times stronger than a human's crushing power. We may have big brains and opposable thumbs, but we're not very good at crushing things with our hands. The crab has gotten pretty popular since its discovery. It even has a nickname, Popeye, because of its huge arms that make it look like a crab weightlifter. The fisherman who caught the crab donated it to the Blue Reef Aquarium, where it's been living ever since. Each claw is about the size of a fist. Nobody actually knows how long crustaceans can live for, but it's definitely more than a couple decades. Staff at the aquarium are hoping Popeye lives the rest of his life in easy retirement. I'm just hoping I don't have the misfortune to meet any of his weightlifting friends out in the wild. Wouldn't you be terrified to encounter one of these in the open ocean? 3. The largest lobster in the world. There's a place called Shediac in the Canadian province of New Brunswick that considers itself the lobster capital of the world. They even have a 35-foot or 11-meter high lobster sculpture that weighs over 15 tons to give themselves the title of having the largest lobster on the planet. But for all the drama, the biggest lobster ever caught didn't actually come from New Brunswick. Instead, it was from the neighbouring province of Nova Scotia. On February 12, 1977, the largest lobster ever caught and recorded was pulled out of the water. The lobster weighed 44 pounds and 6 ounces, or 20 kilos, making it an absolute beast. And this absolute beast was estimated to be about 100 years old. But wait, because in 1926 there was a lobster captured in Maine, which happens to be slightly south of Nova Scotia, recorded at 51.5 pounds, or 24 kilos. That is extraordinary. It was 33 inches or 80 centimeters from nose to tail. The only reason this isn't considered a world record is that it happened way too long ago and nobody was ever able to officiate it. That being said, there's a good chance that these lobsters' measurements were exaggerated by the fishermen who caught them. After all, wouldn't you want to say you captured the biggest lobster ever? But in any case, these are the 2 most legitimate giant lobsters ever captured, and even though they came from 2 different countries, they really did come from the same part of the ocean. 2. The biggest spider crab. Recently, a giant spider crab was captured off the coast of Japan in Suruga Bay. The crab was caught in February and estimated to be roughly 40 years old. As you may already know, spider crabs are the biggest types of crabs in the world. They can even grow to be bigger than most people. This one, which was happily nicknamed Crab Kong, measured a claw span of 8 feet or 2.5 meters. That is the space between its 2 claws. When walking across the bottom of the ocean, this thing would look like one of those ambling alien ships from the War of the Worlds. It weighed 33 pounds or 15 kilos and could live for another 60 years. And while this wasn't the biggest spider crab ever, as some specimens have been captured that have a claw span over 12 feet or 4 meters, it's still nothing to sneeze at. In fact, the Weymouth Sea Life Centre in the UK was so impressed that they had the crab shipped from Japan all the way to England to put it on display. I'm not sure what it is about England buying all the biggest crustaceans in the world and putting them in their aquariums, but they've now got a pretty neat collection at this point. Number 1. 320-pound Canadian shrimp. You may have seen the story circulating about a couple of Canadians on the Atlantic coast who managed to catch a shrimp that weighed 320 pounds. They apparently captured the rhino-sized shrimp while fishing near the St. Lawrence River. The shrimp measured 9 feet, or 3 meters, and was apparently the biggest crustacean ever caught. As much as I hate to break it to you, dear viewer, this never actually happened, at least in the news story as it was written. There is no shrimp that scientists have yet discovered that even comes close to being that big. It would be easy to imagine a massive creature like this sitting below the surface, but the image was photoshopped in this case. The original photograph was that of two men holding a Wells catfish in Italy back in 2013. Somebody switched the catfish to a shrimp and uploaded the pictures online. It would be cool to think that there were monster shrimp like this living in our rivers, but nowadays there's no such thing. However, millions of years ago, it's possible that creatures like this did actually live on the ocean floor or in lakes around the world. Dinosaurs probably did feast on giant undersea creatures like this, but we're safe from them today. And I think that's for the best. After all, would you really want a 9-foot or 3-meter long shrimp nibbling on your toes every time you took a swim? Yeah, me neither. 8. Brig moffa. A clue to the Brig moffa's ferocity can be found in its name, which means biting sperm whale. Measuring up to 23 feet or 7 meters long, this carnivore was found in the area around modern-day Japan during the Miocene period. But some paleontologists believe some may have grown up to 40 feet or 12 meters long. Having teeth in both the upper and lower jaws probably helped the mid-sized whale hunt the fish, squid, and smaller whales they normally dined on. But just because they were big doesn't mean they were untouchable, which means even the mighty megalodon may have had an advantage. Since both predators swam in the ocean at the same time, it's not too far-fetched that these massive animals would have had run-ins from time to time. And even though the Meg was a ferocious beast, Brig moffa had enough bulk to give these ancient sharks a run for their money. The Brig moffa would have been able to ram the megalodon and any predator with its large head when defending itself. They are also believed to have used sonar to track and disorient prey the way modern sperm whales do. Also similar to modern whales, they lived in pods and may have hunted in packs, giving them another advantage over fish, giant squid, and even the megalodon. 7. Nothosaurus. The Nothosaurus was a daunting marine reptile that prospered across the nearly 50 million years of the Triassic period. It was around 10 feet or 3 meters long, with webbed front and back feet, flexible knees and ankles, and a long neck and tapered body. It also had a mouth full of sharp, needle-like teeth. Anything this beast considered prey didn't stand a chance. Paleontologists speculate that because of its resemblance to modern-day seals, the Nothosaurus may have spent some of its time on land. It's a known fact that this vertebrate breathed air, as evidenced by the 2 nostrils on its snout. Without a doubt, it was a sleek swimmer, but it wasn't as well adapted to a full-time life at sea. If you were to compare them to any species alive today, they were probably more similar to modern-day alligators, with both front and back legs, flexible knees, and paddle feet that helped propel them through the water. The Nothosaurus is one of the most important marine reptiles in the fossil record. There are more than a dozen named species of this deep-sea predator. Fossilized remains of the Nothosaurus have been found all over the world, with fossil specimens discovered in Western Europe, Northern Africa, and Eastern Asia. There is also speculation that Nothosaurus, or a closely related genus of Nothosaur, was the distant ancestor of the giant plesiosaurs Liopleurodon and Cryptoclydus, which were an order of magnitude bigger and more dangerous. The creature is known to be the earliest sea-living reptilian hunter of the waters. 6. The Lazaron. 100 million years ago, during the late Cretaceous period, a creature by the name of the Lazaron swam in the ancient seas. Back then, the world was a very different place. It would be almost unrecognizable to us today. Towering plants had evolved and were spreading across the planet, and the Lazaron swam among the giant aquatic blooms of algae and flowers. It was a medium-sized plesiosaur, a large marine reptile that had a long, flexible neck, small head, paddle-like flippers, and a broad, flat body. Interestingly, half the length of the Lazaron can be attributed to their necks, which were made up of 62 vertebrae. Some also had a tail fluke, which was a type of fin that helped them to steer in the water. The Lazaron once swam in the Western Interior Seaway, a sea that once divided North America into 2 parts. It had to battle against mosasaurs, a type of aquatic reptile, for existing fish stocks, as well as other apex predators such as the Tylosaurus, which was known to have hunted other marine reptiles. One interesting find in the remains of the Lazaron are stomach stones, which paleontologists believe they used to help digest food. Stretching around 40 feet, or 12 meters in length, scientists were puzzled as to why a marine animal would need such a long neck. Some theorize they swam at the surface, occasionally darting their heads underwater to catch fish. Others believe they may have used their long neck to cast a sweeping movement to catch their food. But most agree the plesiosaur's neck wasn't actually that flexible. So why did they evolve to have such long necks? Could it be simply that it allowed them to get close to a school of fish high above, without the unsuspecting fish realizing a very tall dinosaur was standing beneath them? Instead of studying only their physical attributes, scientists have had better luck when analyzing gut contents of specimens, with fish and octopus, as well as bottom dwellers like clams and crustaceans found in the stomach contents. It's clear the Lazaron had a varied diet, and their distinctive look only tells part of the story of this long-necked predator. Number 5. Sedumcum. Sedumcum represents one of the earliest members of the Mystaceti, which are more commonly known as baleen whales. The very first whales were actually predators that had sharp-pointed teeth for catching and killing their unfortunate prey. Later whales like Sedumcum diversified to take advantage of an alternative food source and developed baleen to strain small organisms out of the water. Although small, these organisms would have been caught in such quantities that they would have provided ample sustenance for such a large creature. The 15-foot or 4.5-meter whale known as Sedumcum was a primitive animal that may have been smaller than modern humpback whales, but with the nickname whale beast, they could have easily taken on a predator like the megalodon. Scientists believe that these animals dined on smaller organisms, which they would strain through their baleen, a type of tooth similar to human fingernails that sieve prey. Of course, in order to do that, Sedumcum would have spent a lot of time floating near the water's surface. Some specimens were found to have compression damage to their vertebra, which researchers believe may have been the result of impacts with larger predators. Imagine a megalodon spotting the whale skimming the surface above. It would be the perfect opportunity for the massive shark to ram the whale in the belly from below, which would have resulted in the whale's backbone being pushed into a severe arc. Stunned and winded, the whale would not have been able to escape, making them a sitting duck to the meg, who one could imagine would take the opportunity to move in for the kill. Believed to have swum in the waters around Eurasia and North America, Sedumcum went extinct at the end of the Pliocene period, living some 15 to 10 million years ago. But some experts believe members of the Sedumcum family may still be alive today, including the pygmy right whale. 4. Rampas Suus. Sometimes all it takes is a good set of teeth to defend yourself, and that's what the prehistoric Rampas Suus had going for it. A Miocene-era crocodile with a thinner and longer snout than its modern-day counterparts, Rampas Suus had a bite that would have posed a threat to any predator. The first discovery of this species came in 1840 by a team working in India. After uncovering skull fragments and analyzing them, they were revealed to be from a massive crocodile. Rampas Suus fossils have been found in the USA, South America, India, and Africa. Ranging from 26 to 42 feet or 8 to 12 meters in length, with modern crocs only coming in around 20 feet or 6 meters, it's easy to see how this ancient beaked crocodile would have posed a serious threat to other animals. Even more luckily, Rampas Suus had thick, leathery skin that gave it extra protection, even from other predators' formidable attacks. Even though Rampas Suus is a reptile that belongs to the order of crocodiles, the species is more closely related to the gavial, which is a different species of croc that has the same distinctive long, narrow mouth as the Rampas Suus. This prehistoric beast ate not only fish, but other animals too, and with thick paws and gruesome claws, creatures, even the megalodon, would have thought twice before getting close to this one. 3. Leviathan. Leviathan, named after a massive sea monster in the Old Testament, was a monstrous whale that weighed up to 50 tons, or 100,000 pounds. With a 10-foot or 3-meter skull and a length of 50 feet or 15 meters from head to tail, this is the largest predatory whale of the Miocene era and would have been right up the top of the food chain alongside the megalodon. The Leviathan is an ancestor of the modern sperm whale, but much more fierce. It's hard to tell how long Leviathan was around because not that many fossil specimens have been uncovered, but it makes sense they would have encountered the megalodon at some point, given that both predators would have been trying to dominate underwater life 13 million years ago. The Leviathan was the master of them all, with the longest teeth of any prehistoric animal, which would have come in handy when tangling with the megalodon for underwater supremacy. Stretching some 14 inches or 35 centimeters, their teeth would have made tearing into the flesh of their prey easy, but they also had a bit of a trick when it came time to hunt. With something known as a spermaceti organ that allowed them to not only communicate with other whales, but to use it for echolocation, they would have been able to hear predators like the stealthy megalodon long before it made an appearance. It's believed to have dined mostly on dolphins, seals, and other smaller whales. It was a dwindling food supply, and rising ocean temperatures proved to be the Leviathan's undoing. Of course, the Meg also fell victim to the same fate, proving that even these underwater giants had a bit of a weak spot. 2. Kraken. You may have thought the Kraken was just the star of monster movies, but it is actually a very real possibility that a giant squid beast once lived in the ancient seas. Maybe it's not exactly the monster from legends that was said to be able to swallow ships and sailors, but a giant squid did, and perhaps still does, exist today. According to study researcher Mark McMenamin, a paleontologist at Mark Holyoke College in Massachusetts, the Kraken, which would have been nearly 100 feet or 30 meters long, or twice the size of the colossal squid, Nothosaurus, likely drowned or broke the necks of prehistoric creatures like the ichthyosaurs before dragging the corpses to its lair. Proof of the Kraken and its horrid attacks come from markings left on the bones of the remains of 9 45-foot or 14-meter ichthyosaurs, which lived during the Triassic, a period that lasted from 248 million to 206 million years ago. Even today, we have species like the Pacific octopus attacking sharks, so it's not far-fetched to think that millions of years ago, a kraken beast went up against the megalodon. Not only that, but there are tales as recently as 200 years ago of this creature still in our oceans. There are stories about unlucky sailors who mistake the beast for an island and try and land on it. These seagoers would then be dragged down to the bottom of the ocean. 1. Dunkleosteus. The extinct Dunkleosteus genus encompasses 10 species of armored fish that constitute some of the largest creatures of their type that ever existed in the Devonian era. The biggest among them measuring up to 28.8 feet or 8.79 meters long and weighing as much as 4.4 tons or 4 metric tons. They lived around 380 million years ago, long before the megalodon emerged around 20 million years ago. But if there was any ancient sea creature that would have been able to take on the megalodon, the Dunkleosteus would have been it. It had armor that was 5 centimeters thick, covering its entire body, and it had a bite force stronger than any animal. If any animal ever stood a chance against the megalodon, it would be the Dunkleosteus. With its armored exterior made up of giant bone plates on its head and jaw, this prehistoric creature was most likely the largest fish in the Devonian era. First discovered by an amateur paleontologist in 1867 along the Lake Erie cliffs at the town of Sheffield Lake, the specimen came in at a whopping 1,000 pounds or 450 kilos. A toothless fish, they more than made up for this trait by using their armored jaw plates when tangling with both predator and prey. The plates were sculpted into fangs with long slicing edges that would grind up against each other and even sharpen themselves. And their 26 feet or 8 meters of tank-like exterior not only protected them from attacks, but allowed them to eat any animal it wanted. As researchers continued to study the ancient fish, they also discovered their jaws had the ability to open and close so fast that they created a type of suction that allowed them to pull in their prey. Sadly, 2 mass extinction events eventually took down Dunkleosteus, wiping out marine and land animals, destroying their ecosystems, and causing not just Dunkleosteus, but up to 80% of all species on Earth to go extinct.
Number 10. World War II wreckage. In Canada, an amateur diver stumbled upon the amazing wreckage of an old airplane dating all the way back to World War II. The diver found the wreckage at the bottom of Lake Simon in the province of Quebec. According to the provincial police force, the diver managed to capture images of a large mass that resembled an airplane. From what anyone could tell, the plane had definitely been submerged for a significant amount of time. The diver also says he found kerosene barrels on board the airplane and even touched the propeller with his own hands. But just what kind of plane was this and how did it end up on the lake? There wasn't exactly fighting going on in Canada during the war. The diver suggested the vehicle was a late Corps 631 type seaplane, something that would have been used for short voyages across the lake. This was not really a lean, mean war machine and definitely wouldn't have seen any action. Instead, it was probably just a local seaplane that happened to crash during World War II and sink, though nobody can say why it crashed and no one has ever come forward yet to claim the plane for themselves. Number 9. Underwater settlement. In Switzerland, at the bottom of Lake Lucerne, divers have discovered a prehistoric pile of rubble suggesting humans lived inside the lake roughly 3,000 years ago. According to the Smithsonian magazine, the construction of a pipeline is what led to underwater archaeologists examining the bottom of the lake bed. This was when they discovered roughly 30 wooden poles and a handful of ceramic fragments 13 feet or 3.9 meters deep. These were the obvious remains of some kind of settlement that had once been there. It wasn't a settlement of mermaids, of course, which is a slight bummer, I know. The structures had been built before water found its way into what is the lake today, back when the water level was 16 feet, almost 5 meters lower. But here's the most shocking part of the discovery. Until now, experts believe the city of Lucerne was only 1,000 years old. The city is built along the outskirts of the lake. But it turns out the city has history going all the way back to 1000 BC. It's just that the first 2,000 years of the city's history have been covered up by their beloved lake. It looks like the city began in the lake and slowly spread up and around as water levels rose, gradually submerging the city's prehistoric history. A giant anaconda. Professional shark diver and underwater videographer Bartolomeo Bove was diving in the Formoso River of Brazil when he came face to face with an Amazonian anaconda. This is obviously the last thing anyone would want to discover while diving in a river, and the diver must have been absolutely terrified. The anaconda is arguably the most dangerous predator in all of the Amazon jungle. It is so strong that it can very easily coil itself around a fully grown person and crush their bones before swallowing them whole. And yet, according to the dodo, Bartolomeo had dived into the river with the express purpose of meeting the largest living snake in the world. Psycho much? Just kidding. Well, he got his wish. The creature emerged from the murky depths of the river and just about killed him. You're probably wondering how big the anaconda was. After all, you'd have to be crazy to go swimming with a fully grown serpent of this caliber. Anacondas love living in the South American rivers because they can maneuver their massive bodies more easily and therefore have an easier time killing. The snake in this case was 23 feet or 7 meters long and over 200 pounds, 90 kilos, but the diver still managed to escape with his life. As far as anyone can tell, the snake must have had a full belly already. It approached the diver, sniffed his camera, flicked its tongue just inches from his face, then swam away, and it couldn't have cared less. It was an unbelievable experience. No words can do justice to the sensations that I was really feeling during that experience, Bove said. How would you react if you came face to face with the biggest snake in the world while underwater? Let us know in the comments section below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 7. The missing diver. In Lake Tahoe, the mystery of a diver who went missing almost 20 years ago was recently solved. The body of Donald Christopher Whitaker was pulled from Lake Tahoe in late July, just 4 days after a group of divers stumbled upon his preserved corpse while exploring 270 feet or 82 meters below the surface. Lake Tahoe straddles the border with California and Nevada. Donald was last seen diving into the lake on July 10, 1994. He never resurfaced and nobody ever figured out what happened to him. Considering Lake Tahoe reaches insane depths of up to 1,645 feet, that's over 500 meters, recovering his body proved an almost impossible task back in the 90s. The divers who recently discovered him said it was like finding a needle in a haystack. It was a complete fluke that they even spotted his body in the deep darkness at all. What's truly amazing is how well preserved Donald's body was after 2 long decades. Because the water always stays at a constant 36 to 38 degrees, his body remained protected from the elements and looked almost exactly as it did back in 1994. Creepy. Number 6. Lion tooth. In South Carolina, a hobby diver discovered something very rare while exploring the Cooper River. Now, we've all heard of divers finding megalodon teeth. The teeth of these prehistoric sharks seem to be everywhere, as they literally swam all over the world. But to switch things up a bit, Eric Prull discovered a fossilized tooth of a large land predator. At first, Eric thought he had come across the fossilized tooth of an American lion, a great beast that went extinct in the Americas between 10,000 and 12,000 years ago. These huge lions lived all the way from Canada to Mexico, alongside mammoths and the prehistoric tribes of North America. This was a time when even the giant ground sloths could be found roaming across the land. But all these giant species went extinct at the end of the most recent ice age, when Earth's temperature began to heat up dramatically and humans began to spread across the globe. Years ago, American lions were thought to be giant versions of modern lions, but more recent studies have shown they were actually more similar to jaguars and tigers. But in the end, it turned out the tooth hadn't actually belonged to a lion at all. After being inspected by several paleontologists, the fossil was identified as a tooth from a giant sloth-faced bear, yet another massive predator that used to live in North America but has since gone extinct. Still pretty cool though. Number 5. Great Lakes Shipwreck. In Lake Michigan, 67-year-old Steve Liebert discovered the wreckage of a mysterious French ship. As an experienced diving enthusiast, Steve spent years trying to piece together the clues from the last days of this legendary ship so that he could track down its final resting place. He was unsuccessful for the majority of his life, and then one day, just recently, he found the ship completely by accident. At least he believes the ship he found is the infamous Griffin, constructed back in 1679 and destroyed the same year after sinking somewhere in the Great Lake. It was a glorious day. The ship, found by Steve, is definitely from the colonial era. However, it hasn't officially been confirmed as the Griffin, since there wasn't much in the way of artifacts to be discovered. The ship's hull was found broken on the seabed and surrounded by shattered pieces of timber. The problem is that the vessel has been lost for 300 years and there's really no way to properly identify it. All the experts can do is shrug and say, maybe. Though for Steve, he feels like he's done his due diligence and that after a lifetime of searching, he's finally found the mysterious ship. I think we can let Steve have this one. What do you think? Number 4. The Horror GoPro. Rich Aloha was diving in a lake in Tennessee when he discovered a GoPro. At first, he simply thought he had found a free camera. GoPros are not cheap pieces of equipment. It wasn't until he got the GoPro home and took out the memory card that he realised he had found the haunting last moments of a man named Richard Raglan, who back in 2017 had accidentally slipped into the water at the lake and drowned. What nobody knew is that Richard had filmed his final moments on the GoPro, which ended up sinking to the bottom of the lake with him. The GoPro sat down there for years before being found by Rich while he was just out looking for treasure. As you can imagine, Rich was stunned after watching the heartbreaking footage. He reached out to Raglan's family and was happy to return the GoPro, providing a small bit of closure to the family members. They were just as stunned as Rich to receive the call, but also happy to have back a small piece of the man they'd lost so tragically. Number 3. Mammoth Bones. A pair of scuba divers in Florida found a giant bone at the bottom of a river. It was the discovery of a lifetime. Derek Demeter and Henry Sadler never expected to find the 50-foot or 15-metre long mammoth bone, a single femur sticking out of the sand that proved to be roughly 4 feet or 1.2 metres in length. The bone was so big it's hard to imagine how large the rest of the mammoth was when it was still alive. According to Derek himself, holding the fossil of such a giant animal and realising that a creature of that magnitude had once roamed the state of Florida when the state was a fertile grassland gave him a sense of indescribable wonder. He said it almost felt like time travelling and made his imagination go wild. But the pair had never set out to find the mammoth remains. Instead, they were actually looking for shark teeth. They found the huge bone completely by accident. They believe it belonged to what is known as a Columbian mammoth, which according to the National Park Service inhabited Florida starting 2.6 million years ago but went extinct about 10,000 years ago after possibly being hunted to death by early humans. Number 2. Lost engagement ring. After being engaged for a whopping 2 days, Rebecca Shocria lost her wedding ring. It slipped off her finger while swimming with her fiancé in Lake Windermere. The couple watched helplessly as the ring sank to the bottom of the lake, out of sight and impossible to get back. There was nothing they could do except stare into the water in complete disbelief. Hey, I don't know about you guys, but wearing your brand new engagement ring while you swim in a lake doesn't exactly sound like the brightest idea. Luckily for them, divers love finding stuff at the bottom of lakes. The couple got in touch with a local dive company who rushed over immediately to help them get their ring back from the evil clutches of the lake. Amazingly, it took divers just 20 minutes of searching underwater with a metal detector to find the engagement ring. The couple was obviously super happy about the easy discovery, but it kind of makes you wonder. I mean, just how easy is it to find rings and jewellery lost in lakes with a metal detector? Seems like something that could be a seriously good investment. Number 1. Wall of Sharks. A scuba diver was shocked after being confronted by a wall of over 200 sharks while swimming off the coast of Australia. Anita Ong was diving off North Stradbroke Island when she discovered 200 dusky sharks had created an impenetrable wall in front of her. It was as if they had formed an army and were about to go to war. They were staggered in formation and there was nothing she could do to get past them. And if she tried, there was a possibility they would converge and tear her apart. She told the Daily Mail Australia that in 11 years of diving she had never seen anything like it. The wall of sharks was absolutely terrifying. Luckily, dusky sharks are known for being non-aggressive and skittish around humans. They never actually attacked Anita, and she said she didn't feel threatened by them at all, even though they had formed a horrifying wall of death and teeth around her. She eventually moved to the surface and the sharks never even took notice of her. But Anita was lucky. This happened in 2020, in the middle of a very deadly year for Australian shark attacks, with at least 7 fatalities having been recorded already at the time. Number 12. Frilled Shark. The prehistoric-looking frilled shark lurks far below the ocean's surface in the deep, dark waters of the continental slope. Dubbed a living fossil for its primitive appearance, this long, cylindrical, eel-like species reaches roughly 6.5 feet or 2 meters long. Its fins are set far back on its body and it has 6 pairs of distinct, frilly gill slits, hence its name. Frilled sharks are predators who often swallow their prey whole, and they are also equipped with several rows of sharp teeth for when the need arises. They feed mainly on squid, but also eat fish and other sharks. Humans rarely encounter frilled sharks in the wild due to the extreme depths that they dwell in and because the population itself may be small. Most of what scientists know is based on specimens that were snagged as bycatch in deep sea nets. Mothers give live birth as soon as their young are developed enough to survive on their own. Little else is known about the habits, ecology and reproductive cycle of frilled sharks, which are considered near threatened with extinction based on how seldom encountered they are. Number 11. Fanfin Sea Devil. The Fanfin Sea Devil is one of at least 168 known anglerfish species. It's arguably one of the most nightmarish looking fish on the planet, with its gaping mouth full of razor-sharp teeth and an array of protruding bioluminescent tentacles. This pitch-black species is found in what's called the bathyal zone at depths between 330 and 4,950 feet, that's up to 1,500 metres deep. Females reach up to 8 inches or 20 centimetres long, while males are a measly ½ inch or 1.5 centimetres long at most. Humans had never witnessed a live Fanfin Sea Devil until 2018, when a group of researchers captured footage of a mating pair 2,600 feet or almost 800 metres below the ocean's surface. Anglerfish engage in one of the most bizarre reproductive processes in the animal kingdom. They mate for life, but not in the way you would assume. In what's known as sexual parasitism, males latch onto females and live off their blood supply. Meanwhile, the male permanently fuses with the female and becomes entirely dependent on her for nutrients, while his eyes, fins, and all his internal organs, except for his reproductive parts, degenerate. All he becomes is a ball of testes with eyes. Why nature? Why? Finding a mate is difficult in the deep sea, which is why scientists think anglerfish evolved such a unique and drastic reproduction method. Number 10. Zombie worms. Ossidax is Latin for bone eater, which is an approximate term for the genus of marine creatures that also goes by the nickname zombie worm. At first glance, the feathery organisms look like plants, but they are a type of aquatic worm that secrete acids that enable them to bore deep into the bones of dead animals. Because they lack a mouth and a stomach, they are also equipped with special bacteria that convert the proteins and fats from the bones into nutrients. Zombie worms display something called sexual dimorphism, with the females measuring up to 2 inches or 5 centimetres long, while the males are microscopic and never develop past the larval stage. Scientists discovered the Ossidax genus in 2002 on the skeleton of a decomposing grey whale at a depth of nearly 9,500 feet, that's almost 3,000 metres. They are still learning about these creatures, with some experts speculating that zombie worms feed specifically on whale bones, while others are less quick to assume that they're picky eaters. In one experiment, they readily colonised cow bones that were suspended near the sea floor. Critics allege that this test was unrealistic because it's highly unlikely for terrestrial animal bones to descend to the bottom of the ocean and is therefore not a realistic basis for gauging the zombie worm's food preferences or habits. For as little as we know about them, evidence of worms resembling the Osedax have been found in dinosaur fossils dating back as far as 100 million years ago. Number 9. Deep sea hatchet fish. The 45 known hatchet fish species are found at depths of 600 feet to 4,500 feet, or about 180 to 1,300 metres deep. Named after their hatchet-like body shape, they are extremely thin and range in length from 1 to 6 inches, that's 2.5 to 15 centimetres, with the largest species being the giant hatchet fish. Argyropelicus gigas blah 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 like anyone's going to ask you. Hatchet fish, as they are better known, have large upward-facing eyes that are extremely light-sensitive and capable of detecting shadows from above. They're also equipped with photophores that run along their underside and produce light via a chemical reaction similar to that of the firefly. Scientists believe that hatchet fish use their photophores for mating and to hide from predators by adjusting the light level to match the faint light from overhead. But expert knowledge on the creatures is limited because deep-sea marine life is incredibly difficult to access and study on the regular. While most researchers agree that hatchet fish live for roughly a year on average and that they likely migrate to shallow waters to feed at night, much of this knowledge is speculative at best, showing just how much we have to learn about our little explored oceans. Hey, real quick, if you're new to the channel, welcome. What kind of videos are you here for? And if you're liking this video, go ahead and hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 8. Goblin Shark. The Goblin Shark, or Mitsucarina alstoni, is the only living member of the 125 million year old Mitsucarinidae family, earning it a reputation as a living fossil. Measuring between 10 and 13 feet or 3 to 4 metres long on average and weighing as much as 460 pounds or 200 kilos, it has a distinctive elongated snout and a protruding jaw filled with up to 62 rows of nail-like teeth. This prehistoric specimen lives at depths of greater than 330 feet or deeper than 100 metres, and some scientists believe that goblin sharks sometimes dive as far as 4,270 feet or 1,300 metres below the water's surface for short periods. They spend most of their time on the seafloor along the continental shelf, hunting squid and other prey, including fish and crustaceans. When a goblin shark has spotted a target, it extends its jaw up to 3 inches, 7.5 centimetres outward and snatches its meal. Experts have limited knowledge of these elusive creatures, but believe that goblin sharks are sluggish in nature due to their flabby bodies and small fins. Thankfully, their extendable jaws make up for their slow speed. Researchers also think that the species is solitary, like most other sharks. Human interactions with the goblin shark are certainly rare. Some of the first known observations, dating back to 1910, describe the species as grotesque. These sharks never survive in captivity for long, and the extreme depths at which they live make it very difficult for scientists to research them. And for these reasons, they are largely a mystery. Number 7. Mariana Sailfish. Found at depths between 20,000 and 26,500 feet, between 6 and 8,000 metres, the Mariana snailfish is one of the few creatures who can survive in the ocean's deepest region, known as the Hadal Zone. It is one of only 3 species ever caught at a depth of over 26,000 feet or 8,000 metres, and was discovered in 2014 using deep water traps during the expedition of the research vessel Falcor. This pale, tadpole-like species measures up to around about 11 inches or 28 centimetres long and lives near what scientists consider to be the theoretical maximum depth possible for fish to survive at. The Mariana snailfish is armed with special adaptations to help it survive the pitch darkness and extreme pressure that comes with being miles below the surface, which equals the weight of roughly 1,600 elephants according to National Geographic. This translucent species lacks pigment and has no scales and thin muscles. It's also nearly or completely blind, and the ossification of its bones, namely its skull, is incomplete. The creature is specially equipped for deep-sea living, even at the cellular level, with specialised membranes that allow cells to maintain their flexibility. Its eggs are also unusually large, measuring roughly 1/3 of an inch or a centimetre in diameter, which experts also believe is an adaptation to the Mariana snailfish's habitat. Number 6. Telescope octopus. To observe a telescope octopus in its natural habitat, you would have to travel at least 6,500 feet, almost 2,000 metres below the surface of the Indian or Pacific Ocean. This creature is so transparent, it's nearly colourless. It has 8 arms that are all the same size, with a delicate webbing between them. The telescope octopus has several traits that distinguish it from other octopi. For one, it does not swim horizontally to the seafloor, but instead suspends itself vertically and drifts through the water, which scientists believe may make it more difficult for predators to spot the creature from below. Additionally, the species has a pair of rotating tubular eyes that give it wide peripheral vision, enabling it to spot more predators and prey, hence the nickname telescope octopus. Researchers can't fully explain the evolutionary mechanisms behind the animal's bizarre peepers, and it's the only known octopus species that has eyes like this. Some scientists believe that the telescope octopus and some other species have evolved to spend their entire lives in a larval stage. This phenomenon, known as neoteny, is characterised by slowed or delayed physiological development and sexual maturity during the juvenile phase. Number 5. Mysterious creatures. Are there monsters in the Mariana Trench? Life here looks like it's from another planet. Recent expeditions have shown more and more creatures living at the bottom of the seafloor in the deepest place on Earth. But how big can they get? And how scary are they? A strange noise recorded by a bioacoustics project shows strange noises coming out of the trench. Now known as the biotwang, the mysterious metallic sound might be the noise from a whale. The call includes sounds that span frequencies that reach as low as 38 Hz and as high as 8,000 Hz. The call was recorded with autonomous seafaring robots known as passive acoustic ocean gliders, which can dive up to 3,200 feet or 1,000 meters below the surface. Based on the type of the call, researchers think it closely resembles sounds produced by dwarf minke whales off the coast of Australia. But the call sounds much more like something from a Star Wars sound effect. And what is a whale doing down so deep when they have to come up for air? Another strange sound captured was the bloop, a mysterious underwater sound that could be ice moving, a whale, a giant squid, or something else entirely. The trench is actually full of strange alien sounds that we have no idea who made them. What deep sea creatures lie beneath the surface that we've never even heard of? For now, they are mysterious monsters until we can actually identify them. After all, the Kraken was probably a giant squid, a scary, terrifying monster, until we got to know it a little better. Number 4. Fangtooth fish. The name assigned to the common fangtooth is self-explanatory. These demonic-looking deep-sea predators have mouths filled with long, pointed teeth that they use for snagging prey. These terrifying creatures are known to dwell at depths of over 16,000 feet or nearly 5,000 metres, although they migrate towards the surface at night to pursue fish and crustaceans. Unlike many other deep-sea creatures who are ambush predators, the fangtooth fish actively seeks out prey, relying heavily on its sense of smell to detect potential targets in the near-complete absence of light. The common fangtooth is rather small, reaching just 7 inches or 18 centimetres long, and its teeth are the largest in the ocean in proportion to its body size. It even has special pouches in the roof of its mouth to accommodate its fangs and to prevent them from piercing the fish's brain. Despite the species' frightening appearance, it's harmless to humans, especially since it's highly unlikely for a person to cross paths with one. Scientists don't know much about the species' mating activities, given the difficulty of observing the fangtooth fish at the extreme depths at which it lives. They do know that it procreates via external fertilisation, with females releasing eggs and males releasing sperm into the water at the same time. Number 3. Gran Rojo jellyfish. Nicknamed Big Red, the Gran Rojo jellyfish is the only known species in the Tiburonia genus. Scientists spotted the creature as early as 1993, but did not officially describe the species until 2003. This unusual jellyfish dwells at depths between 2,000 and nearly 5,000 feet, between 600 and 1,500 metres below the water's surface. As one of the largest known jellyfish species, Big Red exhibits a condition known as deep-sea gigantism, which is a tendency for deep-dwelling organisms to grow much larger than their shallower relatives. While the causes for this condition are not fully understood, it causes the Gran Rojo jellyfish to grow up to 30 inches or 76 centimetres in diameter. Unlike most jellyfish, this species has no tentacles. Instead, it has between 4 and 7 fleshy arms that it uses for capturing food. The number of arms varies by individual, which surprised scientists, since this is a trait that typically defines a species, according to the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute. Researchers are still learning about this fascinating creature, including what it eats, who its predators are, and its role within the ecosystem. Number 2. Deep sea dragonfish. The 57 known deep-sea dragonfish species are found between 650 and 6,560 feet, so between 200 and 2,000 metres underwater. Although they're small, measuring just 6 to 10 inches, so 15 to 25 centimetres long, these apex predators are nevertheless frightening, with fang-like teeth and enormous jaws that open up to 120 degrees, enabling them to catch large prey. These adaptations help deep-sea dragonfish get enough to eat in an environment that conspicuously lacks a variety and abundance of food. Like many deep-sea fish, these creatures are bioluminescent, producing their own light using organs called photophores on the sides of their body and at the end of a lure-like barbell that protrudes from their chin. The deep-sea dragonfish waves this barbell back and forth to attract prey and mates. These are the only fish that are capable of generating and seeing red light, which gives them a significant advantage over other deep-dwelling marine creatures. By emitting red light, deep-sea dragonfish can look for prey without other animals noticing, since they can't see it. Scientists even believe that they may use this special ability to communicate with one another. But red light does not travel far underwater, so the fish must get pretty close to its prey before going in for the kill. Thankfully, deep-sea dragonfish are extremely dark, which also helps them move in on their target unnoticed. Number 1. Barrel eye fish. Named for the pair of tubular eyes set deep inside its transparent head, the elusive barrel eye fish was first described in 1939. This alien-like creature is considered to be one of the most peculiar species found within the ocean's pelagic zone at depths of up to 2,600 feet. The fish's eyes are very adept at collecting light, and a 2009 study found that its transparent head is probably an adaptation that helps it see in its pitch-dark environment. Additionally, the study determined that the fish can rotate its eyes, disproving the previously held belief that it could only look upward. The eyes are also green, which experts believe helps filter out sunlight from overhead and also helps the fish spot bioluminescent prey. Researchers base their conclusions on observations gleaned from the rare opportunity to study a live specimen, which managed to stay alive for a few hours when brought to the surface. Many questions still surround the 19 known barrel-eye fish species, including exactly how their vision works and whether their unusually short body is a bizarre evolutionary adaptation.
10. Goblin Shark. As you go deeper and deeper into the vast ocean, the kinds of sharks you encounter get creepier and creepier. There's no better example of this than the Goblin Shark. This species of ghoulish shark lives at the very bottom of our ocean, primarily near the continental shelves. These are the edges of our continents. According to National Geographic, they grow up to be about 12 feet or 3.6 meters in length and over 450 pounds or 204 kilos. The main reason they are so terrifying is because, well, they honestly look like something you would only see in your worst nightmares. They have super narrow noses and sharp teeth that look a lot like vampire fangs. A Japanese fisherman accidentally caught one of these sharks and couldn't help but notice the protruding snout, which reminded him of legends about a long-nosed, red-faced demon known as the Tengu. So they started calling the species Tengu zame. Zame means shark in Japanese, and this was translated into English as Goblin Shark. Unfortunately for us, because they live so incredibly deep, scientists don't know a lot about their behavior or why exactly they look the way they do. What we do know is that they are pretty slow creatures. They don't exactly swim fast. The Goblin Shark also has the disgusting ability to extend their jaws out 3 inches or 7.6 centimeters to catch prey, kind of like the xenomorph from the Alien movies. 9. Humpback anglerfish. There are a lot of different kinds of anglerfish in the ocean. These fish are easily recognizable because of the light bulb organ that sticks out of their head and dangles in front of their mouth, like an illuminated fishing lure. But the deeper you go in the ocean, the more terrifying the anglerfish get. The scariest of all is the humpback anglerfish, which is only about 7 inches or 18 centimeters long. But for what it lacks in size, it makes up for in creepiness. These fish live about 6,600 feet, or roughly 2 kilometers deep, in an area of the ocean completely devoid of sunlight. Here are some characteristics of the humpback anglerfish that will paint you a clearer picture of just how creepy looking they really are. They have massive mouths and huge stomachs, along with ridiculously pointy teeth for skewering unsuspecting prey. The lure growing off their head is used to attract prey, and is actually filled with bacteria that glows in the dark. In the darkness where they live, other fish see this little light and are attracted to it. Once they get close enough to it, the anglerfish opens its jaws wide and gobbles them up. The fish is also able to hide or reveal its lure thanks to the muscular skin flaps on its head. What a sentence! This is one fish that people don't particularly want to eat. Nobody wants to stick one of these ugly fish on their dinner plate, but honestly, the brave people that have tasted this bizarre-looking fish said that it actually tastes a lot like lobster. Interesting. Because of how deep they live, fishing has basically no effect on their population. So, even though the humpback angler is probably not that rare, it's been pretty hard to study. 8. Elbow tentacles. A squid with elbow tentacles was recently discovered by science, and, well, it's absolutely horrifying. It looks like an alien and has only ever been seen 12 times in the wild. A recent expedition off the coast of Australia witnessed 5 of these monsters, the first time multiple alien squid have been caught hanging out in the same place. They also captured footage of the animal for the first time, revealing just how strange this deep-sea creature really is. It's called the big fin squid. It lives about 15,000 feet, or around 5 kilometers beneath the surface, and the species is exceptionally unique in the world of cephalopods because of its giant Dumbo-like fins and long and stringy tentacles. Scientists were able to measure one of the specimens using lasers, of course. They found its head was about 6 inches or 15 centimeters, and the rest of its body, made up of tentacles sprouting from what appear to be elbows, was 5.9 feet or 1.8 meters. As you can tell, its tentacles were way bigger than its noggin. Unfortunately, considering how rare the big fin squid is, scientists don't know exactly what it does. They estimate the big fin can grow to be at least 22 feet or about 7 meters. Unlike other cephalopods, the big fin squid has its tentacles jutting out at strange angles, causing them to look all tangled and messy in the water, like floating spaghetti or extremely messy bedhead. Scientists still don't know what it even uses its tentacles for. Do you have any ideas for the use of these tentacles? Let us know in the comments section down below. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. 7. Snailfish. Marine biologists from Tokyo and New Zealand recently discovered a new species of fish deep in the ocean in an area where they didn't think any fish actually lived. It's a type of snailfish, and they found it at just shy of 7,000 meters, or around 23,000 feet, in an ocean trench off the coast of Peru in the Southeast Pacific Ocean. Prior to this discovery, not a single fish has ever been captured in the area. Along with the strange fish, researchers witnessed eels and giant shrimp also residing in the depths. These might also be new species, but scientists still need to do a little bit more studying before they determine that. As for the snailfish, it's a weird one. Scientists weren't actually able to catch it. All they could do was take pictures of it. The fish is completely white. It has weird fins sticking out of its body like pale bat wings, and it seems to have 2 black eyes on the top of its head. Nobody knows what it eats or why it lives in such a remote and inhospitable part of the ocean, but it's definitely creepy. 6. Mariana jelly. In the Mariana Trench, which is the absolute deepest and most mysterious part of the entire ocean, scientists discovered a strange glowing jellyfish that was previously unknown to the world. This was thanks to scientists aboard the research vessel Okeanos Explorer with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They were surveying the waters around the trench when they came across a jellyfish that looked like a flying saucer. The jelly was red and yellow, it had its tentacles spread out like a net to catch unsuspecting prey, and it was living 2.3 miles or 3.7 kilometers beneath the surface. This is one of the deepest jellies ever found. It still doesn't even have a name yet. Do you have any name ideas? Drop it in the comments. As for why it was glowing, scientists believe it probably developed the ability as a way to attract food, aka prey. Small fish and sea creatures move towards its glowing body and get trapped in its net of tentacles, much like the lure of the anglerfish we mentioned previously. 5. Fish with supersight. There are fish that live so deep in the ocean, in places where sunlight can't reach, that have developed supervision. According to evolutionary biologists, this amazing ability is gifted to fish that live in the darkest parts of the ocean thanks to an increase in the rhodopsin's genes. These genes produce retinal proteins capable of detecting dim light. When the genes increase enough, the fish are able to see even the smallest bit of light. Even more incredible is that the extra genes sometimes diversify to produce proteins which allow the fish to capture photons at multiple wavelengths. What this means is that some fish, even as they swim through total darkness, thousands of feet beneath the surface, see in perfect color. It's like wearing night vision goggles, only way better. One of these perceptive fish is the creepy silver spiny fin. It lives about 3,000 feet or 915 meters deep and has been discovered with specialized rod cells inside its eyes that allow it to see in ultra-low light. The rods inside its eyes have been developed in such a way that they're stacked to see what few photons are available at such depths. This is why the anglerfish's glowing lure and the jellyfish's glowing body are such great adaptations in the deep. Animals like the silver spiny fin can see these glowing signals like a forest fire from a mountaintop in the dead of night. 4. Deep sea monster. Recently, a rather terrifying-looking fish from the deep sea washed up on a beach in California in 2021, and nobody could figure out exactly what it was. The fish was found just lying on the sandy shore. Its body was entirely black, like jet black, without a single hint of color. Even the disgusting fangs sticking out of its mouth were black, as if covered in some kind of weird wet ink. It was about the size of a football with a long stalk emerging from its head, looking like a broken piece of celery. At the end of the stalk were white tips experts say were probably bioluminescent. Judging by the size of its gaping mouth, this animal, when alive, could swallow prey the size of its body. Yikes! After the fish was discovered on the beach and curious witnesses uploaded photos online, experts came forward to identify it as a football fish. The football fish lives at least 3,300 feet, or just over a kilometer beneath the surface in darkness, and is one of the over 200 species of anglerfish. The only other blackfish specimen was caught back in 1985 by fishermen in Monterey Bay who accidentally trapped one in their net. It's such a rare fish that the specimen from '85 is still housed in the San Francisco Museum. 3. The black swallower. The black swallower has the most impressive stomach of any deep-sea fish, and with a name like that, that fact is pretty easy to believe, right? To give you an idea of how much food this fish can really eat, imagine stuffing yourself on an entire goat, swallowing the bones and everything, and then letting it digest inside your stomach, which in this fantasy is basically double the size of yourself. This is the black swallower, only around 10 inches or 25 centimeters long, yet capable of consuming fish significantly bigger than itself. It has a stomach that expands, much like a snake. This deep-sea adaptation is so incredibly effective that it can really eat a fish twice its own size, then keep it trapped inside its expanded stomach while the prey decomposes. This is helped by gas released from the stomach, which helps to quickly decompose whatever the fish just stuffed into its greedy face. These gases are so strong in its stomach that they can actually force the fish up from its home, thousands of feet in the blackness of the ocean, so high that it ends up bobbing on the surface. The range in which this fish lives is enormous and covers most parts of the ocean's waters, preferably in subtropic and tropic areas. It's impossible to determine how many individuals of this species are actually lurking in the ocean right now, because their range is so huge they are listed as least concern in the ICUN Red List. This means this species is far from being an endangered one, and because their conditions aren't likely to change anytime soon, this status will likely be the same for a long time to come. 2. Armored sea robin. It doesn't get much creepier than the armored sea robin. It's a super creepy fish that lives relatively deep, around 1,000 feet or 304 meters beneath the surface. Like our friend the Goblin Shark, it also kind of looks like an evil demon fish. It has red, pinkish skin. Its head is very large and its body looks like the end of some medieval weapon. It also has a pair of pointy whiskers covered in what seem to be spikes. It's not the prettiest animal in the ocean, and you should probably stay far away from it. The armored sea robin belongs to the Peristetidae family, of which there are about 45 species. It really does have armor too. Covering the sea robin's body are bony scutes that act as nearly impenetrable armor. But because its body is so slim, it doesn't look very strong. Instead, it looks charmingly like half of someone's spine covered in red gunk, just crawling across the seabed. Number 1. Glowing Shark. Scientists have made what can only be described as the coolest ocean discovery of the century. According to Smithsonian Magazine, researchers off the coast of New Zealand have discovered a glowing shark living deep in the ocean. It's called the kitefin shark, and it's one of 3 species now known to science that literally glows in the dark. The shark can grow to be about 6 feet or 1.8 meters long, and it gives off a cool blue luminescence. It's actually the biggest known species of vertebrate on Earth that glows. It was found in 2020 at a depth of 3,300 feet, or just over a kilometer beneath the surface. As we already know from all the creepy animals we looked at today, glowing in the deep ocean is pretty common. However, this is the first time the biomechanical mechanism was found in a shark. Researchers haven't figured out how the sharks glow, or even why. One theory is that its glowing belly could make it more difficult to see by fish beneath it. Thanks to its shimmering stomachs, it just kind of blends in with the upper luminous atmosphere of the ocean. And at the same time, its belly helps to illuminate the ocean beneath it, almost like a helicopter spotlight that helps in the never-ending search for food. Thanks for watching! What's your favorite deep-sea monster? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe for more awesome content. See you next time. Bye!